Kent. Welcome to the WealthTech podcast. I'm happy to have you on this show. Looks like you're
Thanks.
on some tropical island today.
Hey, I should change my official background to, be official. There, CEO.
Not
It's
that
just
this
not as
make
much
great
fun.
podcast content when we talk about the background screens, but would you mind giving your brief introduction and please give me an overview of Fox and the technology program that you run?
So my name's Kent Lawson. I'm the Chief Operations Officer at Fox, but my primary job is really working in the family office industry and community, working with the offices themselves to help them understand their operations and technology needs, and working with the vendors to help them better understand the family office requirements. So I'm working both sides of the table, if you will. My history is a bit odd. Story of life as a saxophone player, being a musician, married another musician, which then required me to go to get a different job. And I ended up in this wealth management space. So RIA, compliance side, worked at Advent Software on the technology side, but then spent a dozen years as COO and CAO for a very large family office, enterprise family. And I was a member of Fox all those years. And Fox, Family Office Exchange, has been around since the beginning. Sarah Hamilton, the owner, actually pegged the phrase family office when she was working at a bank 37 years ago. And so we are in year 36 here at Fox, and we're an association. Our members are family offices or advisor firms to family offices, multifamily offices, etc. We primarily focus on education. If you're a member of Fox, you are here to learn. You're here to learn from us, the subject matter experts, or people that we bring in, or from each other. Similar challenges that families might have, you put them together so they can talk to each other. We have partnerships that we work with on the technology side and risk management side and a few other areas where they're still part of the community. It's an ongoing basis. It's not the one and done event. That's not our focus. It's really, how do we bring in these vendors who are specialists at what they do? And that's been the idea. You're the professors, the vendors that come in, that's your job. You're here to teach. And so inadvertently, what's happened is that community gets strengthened. The families find the professors to be their number one resource. And when they're ready to make a spend, it tends to be from those people who are teaching. So it's been a great community project. And we've been at this for about 5 years, and it's continually growing. So pretty excited about that.
Well, Ken, I've said this before, and I'm happy to say it publicly. I do think the technology program that you run from a technology vendor point of view, I think it's one of the better ones in the industry. I think there's a real value add to you provide both to technology vendors and to family offices. Can you tell me about some of the common problems that family offices are seeking help with technology that you're seeing and seeing? Shed some light on, how has that evolved over time, those type of situations that they're coming to you with?
Sure. I think a common problem is just the lack of understanding of what they truly need and what they require. I think a lot of mistakes that happen, and I see regularly, can you give me the list of portfolio accounting systems I should look at? And it's like, well, who are you? What kind of office are you? What's your background? What's your future going to look like? And a lot of that gets missed. So you see a lot of the offices looking backwards at their problems, or they're trying to solve for a very specific issue. Here's what I want to have resolved today. And then tomorrow they have a new problem. And it's this constant circle, and they're never getting what they really need. Not never, but often that's the case. They're always looking for the silver bullet, which of course does not exist. You also have this common argument, which has been going on since I think I was a youngster. Best of breed, all in one. And those arguments continue to happen. But I think the biggest mistake I see over and over again, the failures in technology selection and implementation rarely have to do with the technology itself. It's almost always in change management. And so if they're not prepared to spend a good deal of effort and time focusing on the change management, it's a much harder cycle. And it's pretty common.
Yeah, I think those are all good points. I definitely will talk to family offices, and they're doing a search, and they'll tell you like the three vendors that they're looking at, and it's like, it's an orange and a bicycle and a toy shark, and you're like, how did you come up with that list? Like, because I talk to their buddies, or they get some sort of list, and then regardless of what their operational requirements are, what their future state needs to be, what their technology personality is, you end up with this kind of really odd list. And then, to your point, sometimes they get what they ask for, but what it's not what they need, right? In terms of, can you develop more of a strategic framework, have more of a, on the tech side, we call it a product roadmap, but have some sort of technology roadmap. How does that component fit into the larger tech stack? And to your point, the bigger question, and we'll get into that in a little bit in terms of comprehensive versus all in one. But the big subject in terms of technology that's a waving over the family office industry and every industry is AI, right? So how is AI, beyond dominating the headlines? What are you seeing in terms of the vendors that you're working with and how family offices are adopting AI? Can you talk to it from those two perspectives?
Sure. On the vendor side, I see a lot of let me use AI as a new workflow automation tool. I see a lot of that. It's almost like, well, back in SQL, we did scripts. Great. And initially, a lot of the platforms are saying, let's automate some of these steps. And it's not really true AI. It's just a different way of programming. So I think there's a bit of a misnomer that's going on. People call things AI, and it's really a wrapper around some sort of programming or scripting. The better solutions, the ones that appear to be a little further down the road and doing a better job of it, security, number one, that's got to be in place. And being established independently in AI and security is important. And there's a nice long list that you can go through. Responsible AI is part of our world today, and is that part of the picture? But with the vendors, I see a lot of them trying to do smaller tasks. The generative AI is certainly more popular than more complicated AI. However, in the offices themselves, what's being asked for is really a way to take a lot of the human side of things where you've got people that have been in the office for 20 years. Let's say it's someone writing a trust agreement and they've been the primary for all these years and they're getting to the point of succession. And now we're saying, well, can I take that person, how he did trust agreements, incorporate a tool that gets me 80% of the way there. And now we're in a much better place as we do the succession. So that's a common thing. Reporting, certainly common. But the requests really get into who's asking questions. I want to look at if I'm the accountant in an office versus an investment person, and I'm asking for information or searching for content, I have a very different perspective of what I need. So building in all of those characteristics around it is critical. So, but everybody's asking for it. It's a very popular choice right now.
It's certainly I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of hype with it, but I think in some cases it really does live up to the hype. It is game changing. The amount of information that you can kind of summarize, the ability to have conversation with your data, to be able to, hey, can you show me the last three invoices for X, or can you tell me what happened to my portfolio last quarter, and to be able to summarize, a lot of information
Right.
easily.
Well,
Um,
think about it this way. Here's a good one for you. We've spent years and years and years trying to find the right way to store documents, content, file structure, SharePoint. Where do I keep this information? And for that year, it's in a different location. And as we properly unfold AI, now you theoretically could have a single data lake where you just dump everything
yeah.
because I don't need to know where it is because it knows how to find it. So that's a game changer when you think about how much work you could eliminate just in management of
Just
content.
to find the data, right? You don't have to worry about that. Oh, I didn't have the right tagging or wasn't put in the right folder. You can just uh, ask for stuff. Let's expand beyond AI. What other major technology trends are you seeing?
Well, for the past 3 years, it shouldn't be a surprise. If you go back 15 years ago, it was custodial data, right? How do I get all my custodial data brought to me? Well, in the past 10 years, everybody's been doing alternatives. And in the past 5 years, it's great. Now, can I get the same sort of behavior from alternative data that I've gotten from custodial data? And everybody's asking for it. I mean, it is the most popular. And there are plenty of tools out there, this kind of thing. I mean, there's some leaders in it for sure, but it is probably as a peripheral system because it's not a core system doing your accounting. It's probably the most popular request out there now. Um,
It is great to see. I mean, that first mile of data aggregation for alternative investments was, really low value and painful, but it took a qualified high level resource to be able to interrogate documents and to really translate it properly, often at like a CFO level. I remember talking to a family office about that problem, and they said it's like cleaning bathrooms at the airport. Nobody wants to do it, but it's got to get done every 4 hours. And it's great to see so many options available for family offices to be able to automate that process. I mean, the alternative investment industry went, modernized it in 1996 and created a PDF and emailed it to you, and that's as far as it went. And now with AI and these vendor specific solutions, you're really seeing that information get unlocked. You're seeing that low value kind of thing go away. You're seeing more transparency in it because they can manage that data better. It's great. Any other sorts of innovation or trends you're seeing?
yeah. So, one of the things we do here at Fox, among our education and governance, succession planning, et cetera, but on the technology side, we sort of keep track of all the new players. What are they doing? What's their focus? So the other transition that's happened is used to be I've got a major player and they keep trying to build each of the pieces within it, or they'll partner with another significant player. Over the past few years, what you're starting to see is most of the newer players have a very specific, small focus. This is what I do. This is all I do. Plug and play. So I can have this 50 different applications if I want. They're all talking to each other, but I'll handle estate planning over here. I'll handle alternative data over here. I'll do governance over here. Plug them all into your environment. So there's a real transition to speciality instead of bigger systems.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the APIs have made that really possible too, that these systems can integrate, they can talk with each other much better. I think best of breed used to be a really kind of big science experiment that clients had to go through, and now it's a little
That's
bit
right.
more manageable. There's a lot more optionality, as you say, that there's very specific solutions to very specific problems, and sometimes you're seeing them getting born out of family office type of experiences, things like Leaf Planner and Summit. They're really even Eaton.
Right.
These are solutions that are born straight from family offices that are solving very family office specific problems. Well, you didn't see that, 10 years ago. There wasn't that many. You had vendors that maybe said, "Oh, and we'll sell into the family office space," versus now you're saying, "Yeah, not only are we going to sell into the family office space, but we're going to solve problem X."
Yeah. And what is really interesting when you think about that is part of the criteria when you're doing due diligence is, okay, what kind of support am I going to get? What kind of financial backing does the company have? And when a lot of these smaller, newer players with a focus coming out of a family office, it's like suddenly you don't have to worry about, do they understand my space and do they have the financial backing? It's sort of inbred, right?
It's built
So
in.
it eliminates a lot of the initial worries.
It is the golden age. So with all these changes that are going on in terms of vendor specific, family office solutions, AI in particular, is this going to force family office to modernize? What is going to take? I think it took COVID to really get everybody to get into the cloud. But then sometimes you see that it's just kind of a legacy solution that got hosted in the cloud versus on the desktop underneath the desk.
Sure.
So well, is this always going to be a perpetual problem just due to the nature of family offices being cost centers, or is there really going to be a technology that is so impactful, so game changing that it's going to force family offices to modernize? And I'm speaking, there are modern family offices. I'm speaking in
Sure.
generalities here, but you know what I'm saying.
Sure. And I think if you look at the majority of the family offices, one of the things that's a mainstay of a family office is people kind of go and stay, right? You have employees that are there for a very long time. We are approaching the largest wealth transference in history. That's coming. That means the next generations are going to be inheriting, taking over. You are going to see the largest technology stack and implementation in the next 5 years ever in this space. Because now you've got a whole generation of folks who grew up very differently and they expect things to work technologically, quickly, and correctly. Um, in a lot of the platforms and process that has been done for a lot of family offices, it's going to change. It's going to have to. So I think we are about to approach that time where everybody's going to be very busy, but the better you are, the busier you're going to be, right? I mean, it's always that way. But yeah, we're
Yeah,
fast approaching a mass exodus to new platforms.
as I always say, you want something done, give it to somebody that's busy. Um, but I do think that's a really interesting take. Obviously there's been a lot of talk about the ongoing historic wealth transfer, but that means that they're also going to have the keys to the car, and the next generation is digitally native, so that the report 60 days after quarter end in the paper document doesn't work for them anymore. So maybe that's really what causes the modernization of the family office. Let's go back and revisit that all-in-one versus comprehensive solutions. I know, there's really no one right answer for every family office, but there is a right answer for each family office in terms of what approach to take. What are some of the considerations that family offices should have when they take a look at that? And can you kind of break down, those two camps and how, the family offices should be thinking about that fork in the road?
Sure. When I work on consulting projects, and I'm probably with Fox and how we approach it is a little more esoteric than a lot of firms. A lot of firms will look at very, RFP data, need to have, must have. What am I looking for in technologies? But because of what we've learned here at Fox and how we work directly with the offices and the wealth owners, when I go out, the first thing I do is meet with just the family by themselves, nobody from the office, nobody in the operations. And people go, why are you talking to the family about technology for the family office? Because the questions you're asking of that family are things like, in the next 10 years, what's your plan? Are you going to become a philanthropic organization? How many households do you think will be involved? Is there a succession plan? Who's going to be doing things? So you're really looking at the wealth owner and their needs going forward, backing then into their advisors, how they fit into that plan, the office, and so forth. So what happens is, let's say an office came out of, they were in hedge fund, right? And the hedge fund stopped, and now it's a family office. The family that created the wealth, their whole view of what's important to them is incredibly different than, hey, I had a tire company that I sold, and I now got this mass amount of money. So am I worried about tax first? Am I a trust company? Am I an investment company? Who are we? All of those questions get down to, okay, now that we have an idea of who you are in your complexity, your needs, how many generations are, all that, I can start looking at the technologies and whittling away what fits them and their needs. And this is where this comes into play. If I'm an office that is a trust company and I do none of the accounting in-house and I don't have the internal investment group in-house, I have a very different need than, nope, I've got an investment group, I've got an accounting group. So those questions all tell me, what should I be looking at? Maybe I'm only looking at an investment system, portfolio accounting system, because I outsource all accounting and tax. I would not look at an all-in-one because I wouldn't need 50% of what's in the platform.
Partnership accounting and all that, right?
Exactly. And then on the flip side, well, if I'm a true investment focused house, it's pretty hard to find a best in breed, all-in-one that actually has a true upright, I'm going to do all the management of investing. They're not really designed that way. Most of them are designed for post-investment, aggregated reporting, performance, accounting, things of that nature. Again, all those questions come into play. So it's a constant, what fits that particular family? Because you've heard the phrase, seen one family office, you've seen one family office, right? It is so true.
I think that makes sense. That's a really great way to think about it. I think there's a couple things. What are your kind of operational requirements, right? You get at that. Are you gonna, what functions are outsourced? What are the functions of the family office period that's gonna drive your technology requirements, and then that kind of whittles down the options. I think also some of it's around the firm's technology personality. Do they want to manage multiple vendors or not want to manage multiple vendors? That can be a component of it. Do they, have very distinct departments, a very distinct investment department, very distinct finance department, that maybe those departments want to go different ways on their vendor selection? The answer is it depends. It tends to
It
be
does.
honest, and there's not,
Well,
right?
and now we're faced with, since the pandemic, a lot of offices are trying to, especially as they move to new generations of leadership, how can I outsource or become a virtual office instead of the old brick and mortar family office? We see a lot of that, and that's a whole different picture, right? So,
Right, and that's going to inform your technology requirements as well. Um, Change management, as you said earlier, I thought it rang really true. Is that a lot of times I think firms can select. One is family offices. I don't really get great results sometimes with technology, and they struggle with it. Um, and they can tend to select the right vendor or an appropriate vendor for their needs, but still the implementation fails or doesn't gets halfway to what the expectation was. Talk to me a little bit about change management. How can family offices get better results from their technology investment and efforts?
Well, so often you see that again, especially if they've been around a while, a bit. I want new technology to get me better results, but I want it to work the way I've always worked, right? I want to do what I've been doing. Um, my case in point, and this is a real life experience that happened in the past 6 months. Uh, Family office who was a hedge fund, and the mentality was, I'm going to manually validate every transaction. The transactions I get, I'm going to validate that they're all correct. And that's my process. And you look at that and say, well, maybe that's appropriate, maybe it's not, but let's look at it. So in this case, we said, let's look back over 1 year. How many transactions did you actually have to change? And what was the total dollar effect to the family, right? So in that case, there were 2 transactions that had been changed in a year for the total of $12. I'm like, okay, so let me get this right. The family is spending $250,000, $300,000 a year to get that $12 cost corrected. Even if it was wrong by $12, it's back
Right.
to
It's
their benefit.
immaterial. Right.
Right. And so you literally have to look at that and say, how you work, you don't need to do this anymore because you're correct in what you're thinking. From a micro viewpoint, you are correct. But from a macro viewpoint for the family, it's not helping, it's hurting. And that is a discussion for almost everything you're doing. Why are you doing it? What's the purpose? Before you start the implementation, you need to walk through all of the workflow and answer a lot of those questions. So when you're starting your new technology and implementation, you kind of answered, okay, to maximize the technology, this is the process. Will that now work based on all of these discoveries? But so many people don't want to take that time and do the change management question up front, but it always saves time in the long run. It always does.
Yeah, I think anytime you hear this is the way we've always done it, it's like, okay, let's dig into this because there's something
Yeah.
there. And there's probably was a very good reason why they were checking all those transactions at one point. Maybe they really did have some sort of problem and then the data gets better or some change happens.
Right.
Do you still need to do that? And then, the other thing too with if the vendor's recommending a certain best practices, I know you see, family offices are unique and they can be highly customized, but there's no only so many ways to process a capital call that like some of these tasks and functions are not necessarily unique and there are best practices. Um, and that family offices should be looking to adhere to that versus trying to make the vendors change and support functions that are not.
I'm going to get on the capital call for a moment because
Yeah.
if I'm an investment group and I care about performance, what I need from a capital call is very, very different than if I'm an accounting group. If I'm an accounting group, I want every individual piece of the activity and what's going to come on the K1 from the accounting
Yeah.
side. I don't need that on the investment side. And it's a common question. Well, how do I behave? So that's a perfect example.
Yeah. That the investment team is, or the performance isn't going to care how much is recallable or whatever. But there is this kind of desire for like gobs and gobs of historical data, and that can make these implementations expensive and kind of really bogging them down. Where do you see the balance of that? And a lot of times that data is not as good as I think it is. I think that's from a vendor side, being on the vendor side, I've seen a lot of implementations go sideways because the client's data is not great. But talk to me a little bit about data.
Yeah. So clearly, what happens on an implementation of technology when you get into historical data, it's like, what are your needs? What are the real needs? What do I need to bring forward? And what don't I? Some platforms, for instance, on the alternative side, are built that, yeah, you're going to need all the
All of it,
history
yeah.
of that alternative data from the beginning of time, right? If I'm in the marketable space, yeah, maybe I only need the performance measurement numbers that I recorded because my new system may not calculate it the same way. So let's take what I have and what we've booked. We'll bring that forward, but forget the activity, right? On the accounting side, it's a little easier from my perspective because you literally can cut over at a certain date,
Balance forward, right, right.
that sort of thing. Um, but let's say you're talking about a CRM though, right? And I'm facing these questions. I'm got a CRM where my data is bad. It needs cleaned. It needs resolved. I'm going to transfer to a new CRM system. Well, what kind of data do you bring forward and how much of it? That's a very different animal. It's not transactional now. It's information about your wealth owners or your clients or whatever. So you have to analyze the actual pieces of data and determine, okay, maybe I only care about the last two generations of family information. We'll leave the rest of the history alone if that's it. So, but to your point, it's always more expensive than you think it's going to be, and your cost and time are often significant. The more history you try to deal with.
I think those are probably two good axioms there. Regardless, it's always going to take longer than you think it's going to, even with a
Right.
conservative estimate. And then the more data you bring over, the more expensive it is, and the more time it takes. And it can vary based on the dimension of that data. I think that's a great point. Like GL data, when you see so many firms want to bring over that historical data. It's like, do you really need it? How often do you access it? Obviously, you don't want current year, but we start talking about things where charts of accounts have changed over years, and how do you normalize that? And that's where you get into that land war in Asia, and then CRM data. I heard there's stat that like 5% of of your data in a CRM decays every month. So maybe that's not as dramatic for a family office versus a firm that's maybe doing marketing and prospecting, but certainly,
Right.
addresses change, emails change, people's um, are in and out of families. That can change as well, and the quality of that data. What's the point of bringing over a lot of inaccurate or poor quality data? So, data, it's a big deal. It's hard. Let's talk about the future of the family office industry. Obviously, there's so much change going on. I think the one thing you can see is that the pace of change is accelerating, and that's a given. But where do you see the industry 2-3 years out from now?
Oh man, it's just exploding. It's just absolutely exploding. I think about Fox. If you go back 15 years ago, it was just Fox, right? And that was it. And now there are tons of competitors, and almost every university is now having a family office focused area. Um, so just the number of organizations that are focusing on the ultra high net worth, it's just growing like crazy. The number of offices, clearly, that's growing at exponential rates. You look at globally, yeah, just unbelievable numbers. Employing people in this space has gotten a lot more complicated because more offices exist than there's experienced employees. And a lot of those experienced employees are at the end of their career instead of the beginning.
Yeah.
So it's so pretty much a wild west right now with staffing, and it's getting complicated. you get a lot of folks on the wealth management side that try to step into the family office side, and it takes a couple years to relearn how things work and how long things take. I mean, back when I was doing project management on the tech side with a tech vendor, I'd go in and do here's how long it's going to take to do whatever project, right? And when I finally hit the family office space, I realized, oh, well, just do your normal project planning, but then put a 4X after everything. And that's pretty much in line.
Yeah. Do you have any numbers on how many? I saw numbers for U.S. and Asia in particular that were going to the number of family offices would increase by 50%. But do you have numbers on how many family offices there are in say the U.S. or North America, and then any expected growth rates on that?
I'm just guessing here, so if I'm not saying real numbers, but what I'm seeing is we're probably going to hit 10,000 in the U.S. Within the next 5 years. We're not anywhere near that right now, but that's the exponential growth. And if you look at Europe, which has been around a lot longer than us, and of course Asia, Singapore in particular, it's just massive amounts of family offices. We do a family office design workshop, and certainly we have a lot of education areas for this. And it's like, well, what do you have to have a family office? And everyone wants to think of it in terms of AUM, assets under management. It's like, well, that doesn't necessarily dictate how the office is going to work. It's not AUM, it's that complexity.
Yeah.
We've got a family that's well into the billions, and there's 3 people in the office because 90% of their wealth is tied up in an operating company, and the rest of what they do is just a handful of marketable securities. That's it. So a very simple family, but lots of wealth, right? You can turn around and see a 200 million family office that's got 25 people because they're investing in real estate and alternatives and a bit of everything, more complex. And of course, you get into branches, right? Then you get next generation down, and siblings don't agree, and suddenly we're splitting. We're going to do it very differently, but we're going to maintain one family office to serve 2 totally different governance structures. Very complex. But the numbers are, it's going to continue to grow.
As you mentioned earlier, Kent, that you're an Advent alumni. One of the things that's always impressed me is the amount of talent that came out of Advent in the early 2000s. Can you tell me a little bit about why is that? Why is there so much? What was it like back in the Stephanie DeMarco day and Advent? Why has so much talent been kind of starburst in the industry from that organization?
Well, it's funny because I knew Stephanie before Advent existed, right? So she and I served on an ICAA council together back in the day. And when this all started off, we were both developing something for our office. Of course, when I went to work for her, she thought I was pretty funny. But what she started out with was, it's the technology. I'm going to have technology people doing this. And it had its hiccups. And then she kind of shifted to, no, I need business people to do this, right? Well, that doesn't work either. So then she really changed to, I'm looking for really tech savvy business people. That became the focus. So, and the whole education program back at the beginning was, you went out to San Francisco. You had 3 months of training. You went through testing. You did, we're going to send you out to some clients. We're going to test you at the end. You're not guaranteed a job till you graduate, right? And they did that for years and years. And not many companies, especially back then, had that kind of investment in their employees.
Yeah.
As time went on, it continued, and those employees that were in that, especially in that, I'll call it that 15-year window, I mean, they all went on to continue on in this industry and build and do other things. So And there weren't a lot of advents back in those days, right? I mean,
Right.
not like today where you've got 1,200 platforms in this space. Yeah, there were a handful that were really making a dent. So, but she really, it took her a bit, but once she figured out that right recipe, it's been great.
Yeah, I've had a chance to work with a lot of admin folks. I managed that relationship when I was at Fidelity. I've always been impressed with that organization and just the amount of talent that has come out of that organization. That, and you look at like my CFO is another one of those organizations that you end up having a lot of alumni come out of. I like to end these podcasts on a personal note with three questions that have nothing to do with wealth tech. Obviously, you mentioned that you're a professional musician. What were some of the bigger bands that you played with back in the day?
Oh, I played with a lot of the jazz groups back in the day, Mel Torme, Louis Bellson, things like that. But some of the pop groups like Bee Gees and Chicago, things like that. So I had fun. Yeah, it was a blast.
You got any rock and roll horror stories for me?
None that I can share in public. I was always the grandfather of the group. Like when I was on tour, often I'd end up driving the bus because everybody had been having too much fun. And even though I was the youngest guy, I was sort of the oldest guy there.
All right. Well, next time I see you in person, we'll have to have
Okay,
a
there
couple
you go.
drinks and get a story or two out of you. You're in Chicago. I love Chicago. One of the great cities, not only in the U.S. but on the planet. What's your favorite thing about location? Favorite location or favorite thing about Chicago?
Oh boy, I am a huge fan of Chicago for the fact that the restaurants and the theaters are all sort of a miniature version of New York, except not as crazy, right? Even where I live, I live out in the suburbs, but massive amount of great restaurants, and the music scene is great. Chicago Symphony, the jazz scene here has always been great.
Blues scene, right?
Blues, yeah. So yeah, the arts it's just been great.
Yeah, I got a couple. I think some of the blues bars, blues, etc. I like to go to those.
There you
That's
go.
our
The Green Mill. If you like jazz, the Mill's the place to go.
okay. Love it. Can't wait to get back out there. I do love Chicago. I think it's a great city. It has got um you have like it's a major metropolitan city, but it's not quite as crazy or hectic as New York. So I think it's great. Architecture is awesome. I also think highly recommend if you're from out of town taking the architecture tour that takes you
On the
through
boat.
on the ferry there. That's a great one.
Yeah, yeah, it's great.
All right, Ken. Well, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate your insights on this one, and thanks for sharing.
Thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it, Mark.